You know that moment when you finally get that salary increase you've been dreaming about? When your paycheck jumps to 50 grand a year for the first time? Most people think the same thing. I made it. I'm finally comfortable. My money problems are solved. But here's what's weird. 3 years later, many of these people are somehow more stressed about money than they were before. They're making $50,000 a year, but they feel like they're making nothing. And they have no idea why. What if I told you that $50,000 is actually a financial threshold? A point where everything changes. Not just your paycheck, but how you think about money, how you spend, and whether you actually build wealth or just end up running faster on the money hamster wheel. Today we're breaking down the hidden truth about 50 grand that nobody talks about. Let me introduce you to someone. Her name is Sarah. Sarah spent 5 years working her way up at her company. She started at $35,000 a year, and honestly, she was broke most of the time. Rent took half her paycheck. Food, transportation, and her phone plan took the other half. At the end of every month, there was nothing left. She wasn't irresponsible. She just didn't make enough money. But last year, she finally got promoted. Her new salary, $52,000 a year. And for the first time in her life, Sarah felt something shift, not just financially, but psychologically. She finally made what she considered to be real money. She wasn't poor anymore. She wasn't struggling. She was comfortable. So what did she do? Well, first, she upgraded her apartment. It was still affordable, just a bit nicer, a bit more space. Then she started eating out more. Not going crazy, just treating herself because, she deserved it after all those years of ramen noodles and discount groceries. She bought a car that was a few years newer. Her clothes were better, her life felt better. And here's the thing, all of this felt completely reasonable. She wasn't being irresponsible. She was just living like someone who makes $50,000 a year. But here's what happened that nobody warned her about. 2 years into this 50 grand income, Sarah realized something disturbing. Despite making almost double what she used to make, she still had almost no savings. She still lived paycheck to paycheck, and worse, she felt trapped by her new lifestyle. She couldn't go back to the cheap apartment. She couldn't give up eating out. She couldn't downgrade her car. Her lifestyle had become her minimum requirement, not her luxury. And this is where the psychology of $50,000 gets really interesting. Most people assume that making more money is the solution to financial stress. That if you just earn enough, everything gets better. But here's what actually happens at the $50,000 threshold. Your mindset shifts from, I don't have enough, to I have enough. But your financial behavior doesn't shift along with it. You see, when you're making $35,000, you know you're in survival mode. You can't afford to waste money. Every dollar has a purpose. Your spending is forced to be intentional. But the moment you hit 50 grand, your brain switches. It goes from I'm broke to I'm okay. And that small psychological shift is the exact moment you stop thinking like someone building wealth and start thinking like someone who's just trying to enjoy life a little bit. And the problem is, the economy is perfectly designed to take advantage of this exact moment. Think about it. What's happening in your life around the $50,000 mark? Your credit card companies suddenly approve you for higher limits. Banks start offering you better loans. You get access to credit you never had before. Advertisers start targeting you with products that make sense for someone at your level. Everything around you is engineered to help you spend money. And here's the invisible part, the part that really messes people up. Your expenses actually go up in ways that are completely hidden. When you were making $35,000, you didn't have health insurance. You took the cheapest option through your employer and hoped you didn't get sick. But at $50,000, you might actually afford decent insurance, which means you pay more. That's an invisible expense that just showed up. Or you're finally in a position to contribute to a 401k at work, which sounds good until you realize that the money is coming out of your paycheck in a way you don't see or feel. Your taxes go up, not just because you're earning more, but because you're moving into a different tax bracket. You might have thought you were making $50,000, but after taxes, you're taking home maybe 37 or 38. And nobody talks about that gap. That gap is where the problem starts. Yabale. So let's break down what's actually happening after you cross the $50,000 line. First, let's talk about the math. Because the math is where the trap is. When you make $50,000 a year, let's say you take home about $38,000 after taxes, depending on where you live. That sounds like plenty, right? That's over $3,000 a month. But here's where most people mess up their own math. They think about their raise in terms of their gross salary, not their actual take-home money. They see 50,000 and think, great, I'm going from 35 to 50. That's a $15,000 raise. But their actual take-home only went up by maybe $5,000 or $6,000. That's a real raise, but it's nowhere near as big as it feels. And yet, they spend as if it is. They see the $50,000 number on their job offer, and their brain immediately gives them permission to increase their lifestyle by almost that full amount. They're thinking in gross dollars, but spending in take-home dollars. The math doesn't work, but they don't realize it for a few years. The second thing that happens is what I call the comfort plateau. This is psychological. When you're poor, financial progress feels real. You go from having $10 in your account to having $100, and that feels like wealth. You're making progress. You can see it. But once you hit 50,000, you reach a weird psychological point. You don't feel like you're making progress anymore. You don't feel poor, but you don't feel rich either. You're stuck in the middle, and the middle is boring. And here's what happens when people get bored with their financial situation. They stop thinking about it. When you were making 35,000, you checked your bank balance constantly because you had to. You were terrified. But at 50,000, you're not terrified anymore, so you stop checking. You stop thinking about where your money is going. And that's exactly when you start losing it. The third thing, and this is really important, is that your expenses don't just increase randomly. They increase in very specific, psychology-driven ways. Psychologists call this anchoring. Your brain anchors to your new income level, and it automatically assumes that this is how much you should be spending. You're not making a conscious decision to spend more. It just happens. You go to a restaurant, and instead of ordering the $15 entree, you order the $25 one because you can. You don't think about it. It just feels right. You buy the brand name coffee instead of the store brand. You upgrade your phone a year earlier than you need to. You take an Uber instead of the bus. None of these decisions feel like you're blowing money. They feel normal. But when you add them all up, when you add the slightly nicer apartment, the restaurant meals instead of home-cooked food, the upgraded phone, the car payment, the gym membership you actually use now, the streaming services you started paying for, suddenly you've increased your monthly expenses by $800. Maybe $1,000. And that $1,000 a month? That's $12,000 a year. That's almost your entire raise. Gone. So you're making $15,000 more dollars, but you're spending roughly that much more too. And you feel exactly the same financially as you did before. Except now, if something goes wrong, if you lose your job, if there's a medical emergency, you can't cut back to your old lifestyle anymore. You're locked in. This is the trap that nobody warns you about.
Here's the deeper thing that happens at $50,000 that changes everything. Your identity changes. You go from being someone who is making it by, someone who is lower middle class, to someone who is middle class. And identity is incredibly powerful. It shapes your behavior in ways you don't even realize. When you were making $35,000, you identified as someone who was struggling. And when you struggle, you're scrappy. You find deals. You cook at home. You think carefully before you spend, but at 50,000, you start identifying as someone who is okay, someone who is comfortable. And when you identify as comfortable, you start thinking like a comfortable person. You don't clip coupons. You don't stress about $5. You buy what you want because you can. But here's the thing. At $50,000, you're still not rich. You're not even wealthy. You're just earning an okay salary. But your brain starts thinking and behaving like you are. And that's where the real loss happens. Because the difference between someone who stays poor and someone who becomes genuinely wealthy isn't actually about how much they earn. There are plenty of people making six figures who end up broke. There are people making $45,000 a year who retire with $1 million. The difference is psychological. It's about maintaining a poor person's mindset, even when you have enough money. The wealthy people don't shift their identity when they make more money. They keep thinking like someone who has to be intentional with money. They keep asking, is this worth it? Will this make me richer? They don't just automatically increase their lifestyle because they can. But at $50,000, most people lose that. They feel like they've made it to a place where they don't have to think about money anymore, and that's the exact moment they start losing it. The most successful people, the ones who actually build wealth, they go through $50,000 and don't let it change them. They still cook at home. They still drive the same car. They still think carefully about money. But instead of thinking, I can't afford this, they think, do I want to spend my money on this? That might sound like a small difference, but it's everything. Not. Your brain will try to make it happen automatically. You have to actively fight against it. Second, understand the difference between your gross income and your take-home. Don't make spending decisions based on the number you see on your job offer. Make them based on the money that actually hits your bank account. Third, and this is important, when you reach that threshold where you feel like you're finally comfortable, that's the moment to get intentional. That's not the moment to relax. That's the moment to actually build wealth. Because the gap between making $50,000 and staying broke versus making $50,000 and becoming rich isn't that big. It's usually the difference of a few $100s a month that you decide to invest instead of spend. But psychologically, it feels huge because you have to keep thinking like you're poor even when you're not. Fourth, stop anchoring to your income and start anchoring to your values. Ask yourself, what kind of life do I actually want? What actually matters to me? And then spend money only on those things. Everything else is just lifestyle inflation disguised as comfort.